We'll get our final deep dive here. Michigan 42, OSU 27. So basically, what I saw in that game was a Michigan team that was physical and they were hungry. They were in the first half of the game when they needed to be. They were balanced 60-40 between the run and the pass, and I think that was really effective for them. And it's easy to do that when you've got a 2nd and 2 constantly where you can take shots on 2nd down and feel like you can convert on 3rd, or if you've got to go for it on 4th down, you can do so. That left OSU really on edge. And then the biggest thing, and we talked about this, a lot of people talked about it, but they said if you're Michigan, you probably got to control the time of possession, limit Ohio State's cracks at it. And maybe it's the other way around, because Ohio State's a team that can typically score in, a 2-minute or less drive, right? Michigan was the opposite. They lost the time of possession, but what they made Ohio State do was really earn their way down the football field. They made Ohio State take long ass drives. Ohio State did not have a scoring drive that was less than 12 plays. And one of their 12, I guess 2 of their 12 play drives resulted in field goals. So you spent 12 plays to kick a field goal. It's not the way you want to play ball if you're Ohio State. And then finally, and I'd be remiss without saying this, but Aiden Hutchinson deserves his flowers for the way that he played in that game. He became the single season sack leader in Michigan history, which is a phenomenal achievement for him. But the way that he played, just the enthusiasm, the intensity, the leadership he displayed, he's probably living in CJ Stroud's nightmares right now, just in terms of his ability to get after the quarterback. But it was a thorough domination. There's no other way to put it.
Yeah, I thought that was a huge point, and I'll echo it. Is just the physicality. I thought Michigan up front, both sides of the ball, really took it to Ohio State in a manner that I don't think Ohio State's had it taken to them in quite some time. I'm talking both sides, and that's I don't know if you want to hock it up to passion or intensity or focus or more meaning more to a program. I think that's something that Ohio State may have overlooked a little bit, at least within the locker room, is how much I think this Michigan team, it meant to them. Just watching them play, you could tell it seemed like it meant more to them. I think it was just getting their ass beat, honestly, for the past few years.
Yep.
And it's a point not to be overlooked. And then I think your point about forcing Ohio State to string drives together and long drives and execute consistently is something that we both overlooked in our analysis last week, and I think is a great point. And when you have a young quarterback playing in that big of a game, that stage, everything that it means, that is something that cannot be overlooked, because the ability to execute and take what's there over and over and over again, it's just you're testing the quarterback's ability, you're testing his patience, you're testing
that's exactly what it is.
You're testing his ability to not get bored. And when you do that with a kid who has 3 first-round draft picks outside and then, to be determined 5 or 6 other guys, that's something that's really, really hard to do, because as a quarterback, you've gotten away with it all year. And now in this game, they didn't really allow them to do it. And I think that's a massive point and something that our viewers should really take into consideration moving forward. And I think, again, like I said, that's a great point by you.
Yeah. And this is not to say that CJ did not play well, because he did. It's to say that you get impatient when you're used to seeing everything happen so easily and you can take the ball down the field in chunks. And I think that's for the quarterback. And I think that's also for the people calling plays as well. Like if you're Ryan Day and you're Kevin Wilson in that situation, you are not used to calling 12 play drives. You're not used to calling a 15 play drive. You're not used to being in that rhythm, in that tempo. And it becomes really difficult. And then where it becomes even more difficult is when you have to do that when you're playing from behind. And I think that's really something to see there. Now, I want to get into 2 points to talk about the physicality of the game, because you had mentioned it, I mentioned it, obviously. But Michigan's ability to stop the run, which we had a conversation about offensive philosophy where I had mentioned that, I feel like Ohio State doesn't really dedicate itself to the run game. And part of it's because you got a bunch of guys who can make plays throwing the ball. Like, you do what you do best, but Michigan really exploited that. And I think it hampered Ohio State because it allowed those bookends for Michigan to really just rush up field all the time. They didn't take the chances to really run the ball to try to slow those guys down, which I think was it was a big flaw. And there was another flaw there with the offensive line I'll get into in a sec. But the flip side of that, watching the way that Michigan bullied Ohio State on the ground, specifically the second half of the game, was staggering. Because the first half, I mentioned Michigan was pretty balanced. They actually threw for more yards than they ran for in the first half of the game. And a lot of that was situationally. There were opportunities for them to take shots down the field. But their first drive of the second half, they made Ohio State punt. They get the ball. 3 plays, 81 yards, all runs. Blake Corum around the damn edge. And then Blake Corum, 55 yards up the middle. And then Hassan Haskins untouched into the end zone. That was the game epitomized to me in a single drive, is OSU's inability to be physical, inability to get off of blocks, the lack of passion. And the flip side of that was Michigan saying, F it, we're just going to maul dudes, and we are going to assert our dominance as a team who wants to be in control of this game.
And that's such the ability to have a drive like that coming out of halftime, emotional first half, a lot of expectations coming down the pipe, and to be able to stop the Ohio State offense and then come down and not only drive the football down the field, but drive the football down the field in that manner, that will take the wind out of anybody's sail. I mean, that was a straight challenge your manhood type drive.
Yep.
And when things like that, the hidden yards, that's kind of like the hidden momentum and the hidden attitude of the game, right? When you have a team who can sit there and make that type of statement right away, whether as a player you feel that, like being in those situations, it's hard to explain. Like as a fan, I'm sure some fans felt it too, but as a player, you're like, you could look at anybody if you're sitting there watching the game with someone, you're like, dude, that was a put everything on the table. This is what I got, big boy type drive. And they did it. They did it the whole game, and they did it. They've been building to this, and I think this Michigan team has really come to fruition at the right time. And I think that they are, without a doubt, a player for the national title. It'd be interesting to see how they do square off against another physical team like Georgia. But when it comes to anybody else, that whoever comes out of these playoff rankings here after this weekend, I think from a physicality standpoint, it's going to be hard to match up with them.
Yeah, the physicality was absolutely there. And after a drive like that too, as a fan, you're sitting back saying, okay, even if Ohio State can put together some drives, I don't know how they're going to stop Michigan's offense. Like that was it right there where you said these guys can't get a stop. And that to me was extremely staggering because of the way that they were punching, and there was no counter from Ohio State. I'll flip back to Ohio State's offense real quick. We can get off this game for just a second. But we talked about the matchup in the trenches with Hutchinson, Nojabo on the defensive line versus Ohio State's offensive line, who at times had some problems. And the one thing that stood out to me was there was the running backs were out in the route. There was no max protection. There was really, I think the game plan was we're just going to block these guys like they're any old dudes in the Big Ten and see if we can throw it down the field. And I think that was malpractice in a way because those guys had wrecked games against everybody. And Ohio State should have felt no different just in terms of how they had to pay extra attention to those guys.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think Ohio State's of past could have done that. And they did do that really. And I think it was almost a little bit of a shot to their, it's hard. Like this is rough language, but it's really the only way, like their egos from that standpoint. I think Ohio State felt that they could do that consistently with anybody in the country for the past 10, 15 years. And when you run into a team within your conference, and specifically a team that you've pretty much sunned for the past 15 years, when they come out to play, it's you got to be able to adjust. And I don't think they ever were able to do that. I think they took it for granted. And, I just keep saying it. I think Michigan showed up, came to play, and the best team won on Saturday.
That's exactly what happened. The best team ended up winning that football game.